Welcome to BIV Today, the daily podcast from the Newsroom of Business of Vancouver. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. You know, Michael Lee ran in the 2018 BC Liberal Leadership Campaign. He finished pretty close. Really, I think, surprised a fair number of people about how closely he did finish, because he was still at that point a relatively new MLA, and he was up against, in a couple of cases, some better-known rivals. So it's logical that he would have spent the last 3 years on the front bench of the legislature in opposition and then determined to contest the leadership again to succeed Andrew Wilkinson. Let's find out how he's going to do that. Michael Lee, the Liberal MLA for Vancouver-Langara, joins me now. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, Kirk. Thanks for having me on.
You're looking very healthy. Now, let me ask you about this. What did that first leadership contest teach you about how to run this time?
Well, Kirk, I believe this leadership race is an entirely different process from last time. The first time, as you say, I was a rookie MLA, as they call me. I was an MLA for all of 3 months for Vancouver-Langara. And we had put together our team like the other teams after Christy Clark stepped aside within 1 month and launched, had a number of months through the fall of 2017. And through debates and the various showcases and signing up members. I learned a lot from that campaign in the sense of I spoke to issues around how do we broaden our appeal? How do we reach out to those who have been longstanding members of our party, but also new members and others that we want to attract to our party because our base continued to shrink. Certainly, when you look at the 2009 to 2013, the 2017 elections, that's the case. And of course, today, as a result of that unfortunate, unnecessary snap election in 2020, we're even further down in terms of voter support. So it's important that we take the time, as the party has done. I know you've commented on the campaign debrief report that the party released. There's been lots of conversations that have been very deliberate in the approach this time around. And really speak more to the values that I want to rebuild this party about. Last time, as much as it was about renewal, this time is about a total rebuild for the party.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you've concluded about the party's own challenges, you know, the values you feel it needs to convey and what it needs to do now.
Well, Kirk, I'm running to restore trust for the BC Liberal Party. I believe that is the number one thing that we can be doing in this leadership race. So many British Columbians and party members have lost trust in our party. We became disconnected. And I think that to do that, I've committed to lead with integrity, to not be beholden to any special interests. I think that one of the largest regrets that I have for the team was that we didn't change the fundraising rules, for example, when we had the opportunity when the last BC Liberal government was in place. Yeah. And I think that what we need to do is ensure that people feel that we're leading with accountability and responsibility, certainly with taxpayer dollars. And that's certainly, you know, the fiscal responsibility is a cornerstone of the BC Liberal Party and certainly of my campaign. But also in terms of truly listening, we need to have that level of engagement where members and other British Columbians didn't feel like we were hearing their concerns and their issues and really talking to those issues beyond just the narrow focus of jobs and the economy. And as we go forward, we have to keep this party united around common values as to what we stand for as BC Liberals. So this is a complete rebuilding process. And I know that as we go forward in the next 7 months and a week, there'll be lots of opportunity to have that level of engagement.
Can you look back on your own contesting of the leadership last time and tell me a little bit in your own postmortem way what you feel you had to develop as skills in order to seek the leadership this time?
I thought that in terms of the leadership race last time, we did reach out across the province. We signed up the most number of new members, what was reported as 10,000 out of 30,000 new members for the party. We had a very strong digital presence, as well as a young component to the campaign. those are the things, those ingredients, Kirk, that we will again have, like any other leadership candidate, that will all want to be having strong focuses in those three areas. I believe that I have a very broad appeal, including in the Lower Mainland. But I learned a lot, Kirk, as you say. I wasn't as well known as the former cabinet ministers that I ran against, or former mayors in the race. I was the one who had the least profile starting the race. And I would say that as I did more meet and greets around the province, that I was picking up traction. I think in terms of my so-called debate performance, it continued to strengthen and improve through the course of the race as well. And I think my voice, when we talk about the way the race came together really quickly, Kirk, I didn't have as much opportunity as I do this time to really shape the campaign the way I believe it should be shaped, around the values, around truly hearing and understanding what is best for British Columbia as we go forward. And so obviously we're in the midst of a pandemic, and hopefully everybody's staying safe. And as the restrictions from a health point of view relax a little appropriately and safely over the summer into the fall, we'll have more opportunity to really get that message out in front of a likely federal election as well.
I want to talk a little bit, Michael, about values in this, and because I think it would be fair to say that you're more of a social conservative than some of the others in the race. And I wanted to ask how that informs your politics, and what that would do in terms of your own emphasis as not just a party leader, but ultimately as a premier.
Well, Kirk, I think that the NDP have come at that topic, I would say, within a day after I launched. Mm-hmm. And they're digging up some past issues, let's say, that were made very clear in my last campaign, which was 3.5 years ago. I was very clear that I believe in a woman's right to choose. Mm-hmm. I was very clear in terms of, and I think everyone who knows me believes that I know and I stand for a very balanced and inclusive party, one that recognizes LGBTQ rights, recognizes and very much embraces that we need to have a place in our province and a party that clearly is inclusive, that is not discriminatory in any way of anyone based on their age or gender or sexual orientation, religion, as we come forward, and that there is no place for intolerance in our party, as well as the fact that as we look at our education system, for example, the third point that the NDP questioned, I believe that we need to have an inclusive education system, one that helps young people navigate in a dynamic world, and that includes programs like SOGI. So I reject any question relating to any of those considerations. I am a family-based person, as anyone else, in terms of a strong family and recognizing how we need to support each other, that there's responsibility for each of us in our communities in terms of what we contribute. So I, Kirk, would not characterize myself in that manner. But I think certainly for the BC Liberal Party, we do need to have respect for people's views. And I do think that as we come forward, we have a common set of values, which I just articulated in some manner and certainly happy to talk further about. But we have to set that very clearly and recognize that those who support the BC Liberal Party share those common values as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could walk through the postmortem that the party did of all this. And as you alluded to earlier, it was a pretty important document for the party. Would you agree with the overall sentiment, that came from that, which was that the party took a long time, the leadership took a long time in order to send a very clear signal about issues involving tolerance and acceptance and inclusivity and so on?
Kirk, I'm a member of the team, and certainly I support the team as we went through all those difficult times. And there were pressure points that were being raised, including by the NDP and Press Progress and other arms of that government. I think that we have a respectful team, and that a lot of those concerns that we were working through and navigating certainly were important to address. But I'm not going to second guess that at this time. We have to move forward. And I believe that rather than looking backwards, we have to look forwards. And that's why I stand to come forward to build a more balanced and inclusive party for the BC Liberals. And that's why I decided to run again. I mean, I think that as much as you talk about what I learned from the first campaign, I never really expected to have this opportunity, right? I expected that we were going to be winning that next election whenever that was held, and it was held 1 year earlier. They broke the fixed election date law, as you know, in the middle of a pandemic. It was the wrong decision for this province. But now we're in the situation where we have the opportunity to rebuild the party and reset the values for the party. And I want to be very clear with that as we go through the next 7.5 months.
Yeah, the NDP may have fractured the set election date, but it appears to have worked principally in its favor. You know, the premier is now riding rather high in terms of public perception. So what can you do to knock him off his perch?
I believe he made a mistake. John Horgan made the wrong call. I think he demonstrated that he's prepared to put his political future ahead of the province's. It was the wrong decision, clearly. And I know that in talking to many voters from a safe distance on their doorstep in Vancouver-Langara through that election, that regardless of whether you vote for the BC Liberals or the BC Greens or the BC NDP, there was widespread recognition that that was the wrong decision. It was a bad decision. And I think it demonstrates exactly the kind of leader that we have currently. And I think as we look at other decisions that have been made over the course of their government, that there are other examples of that. The discrimination treatment that we see in terms of the union benefit agreements, for example, that favor only certain unions and discriminate against what is 85% of the construction workforce on public infrastructure projects. The expansion of government, it's only government knows best, and that's the only solution here. The cost structure of government is getting larger and larger, and it's not affordable or sustainable for this for our province as we move forward. So I believe, Kirk, that we're going to see. We know that we had to keep a strong focus on getting through this pandemic, and that's been so important. And many sacrifices have been made and many lives lost, unfortunately, regrettably. But now that we're coming through this, they're going to start to show their colors. And I think that that's where there's going to be opportunity to present a stronger alternative as we get through the balance of this leadership race and coming out of it when we have another leader, a new leader for this party in February of 2022.
Yeah. Whether it's this party in power right now or the party in power after the next election, Michael, there are some very difficult economic choices of any government, given that, there's no question going to be diminished revenue of some sort for some time, and an increased expectation of public involvement in the economy. Where does that guide you on the kinds of choices that have to be made here in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years?
Kirk, I think this is the reason why we need stronger leadership in this province. We are at a real tipping point, as you say. Certainly, some sectors of our economy have been able to continue to perform well. I think the construction industry, for example, some of the industries in the resource sector. But as we know, right, with hospitality and tourism, for obvious reasons, it's been a real challenge. I think the cost structure in this current government, even before COVID, in terms of the level of public sector hiring that built up the cost structure, I think it's unsustainable, as I mentioned. And the tax structure is as well. So as we go forward, I think, Kirk, what COVID has demonstrated to us all is the way that the world can adapt very quickly. Even from a protectionist point of view, whether it's production of vaccinations or otherwise, I think that the borders have closed for safety reasons, but there's a certain protectionist attitude, I think, that's out there that we have to be stronger in our own terms, that we need to continue to build the trade relationships with the Asia Pacific and the United States. But we're going to need to do that in partnership with the private sector, with not-for-profit organizations, and of course with First Nations in order to move forward this province. So we don't need this leadership, which is the politics of division, pitting one group against another. And I think that the real challenge for us is how do we bring things together in this province to collaborate more, because we're going to need that level of cooperation for us to really prosper for the future, including for our children and grandchildren to come.
At the risk of flattering you too much, I've always found you a very gracious person who doesn't have really nasty personal things to say about rivals terribly much. But I want to at least ask you to position yourself against your rivals in this race and tell me a little bit about what you think you have that they don't.
Kirk, thanks for that comment. We are all in the same team, and I welcome what will be a very strong competitive race. We have 4 official candidates now, with Gavin Dew, Val Litwin, Kevin Falcon. I expect we'll have at least 2 more that are coming, and I'm happy to talk about them in the future once they're officially announced as well. Ellis Ross, of course, is one of those 2 that I expect, because he's already announced in some ways, but he's a great colleague, certainly. And I believe that every one of us, and anyone else who decides to throw their hat in the ring, welcome that too, are going to provide a lot of strong ideas, Kirk, a lot of strong leadership perspectives of what we need to do to move forward. And they're going to bring a lot of energy to this race, which is what this party needs. For me, though, I started in the community back in 1984, working with Youth at Risk in Chinatown. Being on a National Youth Advisory Committee, I was selected to be on, working on immigrant and social service organizations and student government, and working in the federal government for the Progressive Conservatives under Kim Campbell when she was Minister of Justice and Defense. Those were the formative years, as I call them, which were 9 years of my life before I went to law school at UVic. I had a 20-year career working with resource companies, mining, energy, forestry, technology companies, all of this province. I know this province well. I know the importance of that linkage between our resource sector, which is sustainable, responsible, innovative, and how it needs to partner, of course, with First Nations and continue to look at how do we transition to a lower carbon environment. But we also need to look at how everything is interconnected. I have the understanding, I believe, and the feel for communities here in the Lower Mainland around the province. We have similar issues in terms of those who are homeless, those who are struggling from mental health and addiction, community safety. How do we find those right supports for those who need to be educated, both for the jobs of tomorrow and the skills and retraining? These are issues that I believe that I have a strong understanding about. And I come at this from a different perspective, Kirk, because I left my law practice after 20 years, after about 37 years in the community, when my kids were out of high school, as a commitment to my wife, Christina, to really help improve the level of excellence that we have in our elected officials, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal, and we know we have challenges on all 3 levels. I have an opportunity here to run for leadership of this party again, to reshape a campaign and hopefully the party to come, to be a stronger organization that I believe will really connect with voters and do the right things for the future of this province.
Well, you're actually setting up my next question that I had planned, which is that of course, you did come to politics from a law practice you could presumably return to, one that would make you more money, I'm sure. Are you committed to running again if you don't succeed this time around in the leadership race?
Yes. I mean, look, I had other opportunities, as they say, politically after the last leadership run, and there was lots of rumors. And before the leadership, and before I ran as a candidate for Vancouver-Langara. And look, I'm committed to this team. I'm committed to support the next leader of this party, whoever that may be. Obviously, I'm committed for what would be a 12 to 16-year commitment if I win the leadership. Because this is a long run. It's a long run in terms of the history of this province and how we continue to rebuild this organization. But in terms of the law practice and all of that, I think that I certainly have a lot of good understanding in terms of the great businesses and organizations that have built our province. And, we all are working together in different ways, and we all have different roles to play in this. So I look forward to continuing those levels of collaborations as we go forward.
I've asked others in this race, I think, a similar question, Michael, and we'll conclude our conversation with it. It has everything to do with the fact that, you at some point in February, one of you is going to wake up one morning and you'll be the leader of this party. And I want to ask, in conclusion, what's the first thing you'll do that morning? Thank
my wife, Christina. I think what we'll do is we'll spend a little time together, because this is a long haul. I think I counted up recently, out of 60 months, 5 years at this, which includes a year in the lead up to running as a candidate in Vancouver-Langara, that Christina's been with me on this, that I would have been campaigning for about 36 months out of 60 months. When you include the referendum, the 9-month referendum fight to keep our current past the post system. So it's been a long run, and it's a lot to ask of family and my wife, Christina, and others, right? So, I think that after that, though, Kirk, it will be making a lot of phone calls to thank those who were involved and supported, and to reach out. To reach out to the other teams that were involved, the other candidates, of course, that I would have seen the night before when the vote count comes in. But the rebuilding of the party continues the day after the leadership vote comes out. And for me, it started on the day that I launched, which was 2 weeks ago. And so that's, you think, what the first next step will be in terms of guiding the party? Yeah, I think there's a lot to bring together, Kirk. We're going to need everybody's help in this. As I mentioned earlier in response to another question, we're all on the same team. And I think it's very important that we all understand that, despite the fact that we're going to have our debates and we're going to have our disagreements, and we're going to have to show that to other members of the party and the public here through media channels like yourself in terms of different points of view. That's going to be very important. But at the end of the day, after that leadership result is done, we're all back together as one team. And I certainly will do my utmost to reach out to the so-called other camps and really get them integrated and involved, and to move forward together, united. Well, Michael, always good to see you. Thanks a lot for your time today. Well, thanks, Kirk. I appreciate this, and look forward to the next conversation. Michael Lee is the Liberal MLA for Vancouver-Langara. Of course, he's running for the BC Liberal leadership. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief of Business in Vancouver. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you again.